Hi, everyone. My name is Tony Cockmo, president of the DFW BIM Infrastructure Group, and welcome for another session of Expert Elite World. Today's guest, I know we have another Expert Elite member, is Donnie. Donnie, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Sure. So my name is Donnie Gladfelter. I am the design technology manager at a firm by the name of Timmons Group. We are about a 700 person firm, primarily in the Mid-Atlantic, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, kind of along the East Coast. But we also have some offices out in Texas and Arizona. So we do have a pretty good footprint. I know you hail from Texas as well. But anyway, so my responsibility is obviously focused on supporting our teams, finding ways to help them be as efficient as they can. And yeah, I've been essentially doing this for quite some time. Some folks might know me as the CAD Geek. I've run that blog for, more than 15 years now. It's been a while.
I've seen it. I've been there.
Authored a bunch of books, and also been a pretty regular speaker at Autodesk University. If I get an approval this year, it'll be my 15th consecutive Autodesk University at speaking it. So anyway, I've been doing it for some time. I oftentimes joke I'm not trained to do much else, but I really enjoy it and helping other folks. So.
What's some of the books you've actually written? You said you read, I think you have some books here.
Yep. So I formerly authored the book AutoCAD and AutoCAD LT, No Experience Required. I did that for 6 years. Yeah. So I guess it was 2010 or 11 through 2016 release. So it's been a few years now. Kind of gave that up when my oldest son was born. Yeah. It was quite the level of effort every kind of winter, early spring, getting that out the door. But yeah, it was a 1,000-page book. Some of my former colleagues called it the King James version of AutoCAD because of its length.
Is that the book you have behind you?
Yeah, on the shelf there. It's a nice short 1,000-page read.
King James. That's funny. So what version of, I guess, Autodesk products did you start with when you first started?
So, I guess was kind of fortunate with the high school that I went to. I started taking basic technical drawing classes in high school. And back then it was release 12 for DOS. So I essentially got to experience, AutoCAD with how to interface, nice little screen menu over on the right-hand side. And kind of grow up all throughout the little toolbar phase and now obviously into the ribbon stage.
Yeah. What were they teaching you in class at that time with just AutoCAD 12?
So, back then, board drafting was still a skill that was genuinely practiced in industry. In fact, I remember one of the first jobs I had, granted, he retired shortly after I joined the firm, but he still hand drafted everything. And I mean, this was late 90s, I guess. So it was still a skill. And so I remember, in that first technical drawing class I took, my drafting teacher, Coach Spain, I still remember the guy's name, have a great deal of admiration for him, even put him in the acknowledgments of my book as well.
That's cool.
And anyway, he had us do, the typical drafting exercises. We drew everything on the board for the first half of the year and learned, lettering and all the good drafting skills. And then, I guess the third quarter of the year, because we were able to do things so much faster in AutoCAD, we redrew everything we drew on the board in AutoCAD.
Yeah.
And so he gave us I think a really awesome perspective of seeing how to do it both by hand and, digitally, electronically on the computer.
Yep. I mean, I spent our first 2 years in the Air Force after boot camp was manual drafting. Yeah, we took 2 years. And every day, like the first day of class, he goes, "Hey, you're going to write this letter correctly, every letter of alphabet 100 times." They had a certain way they wanted to look. That was our homework. Make sure it's perfect, because we're also learning how to write in the field book, and you can't erase in the field book, so it's got to be, everything will be perfect in the field book, writing it's a legal document notebook, So, but no, I remember hand drafting in the Air Force. So, and then we actually had, we practice on when you're making corrections on a Mylar for like a plat. You got those little templates. You got the rubber machine that's going to erase it.
And the electric eraser.
Yep,
And
the electric eraser. Yeah, I did that a couple of times because my first engineering company, I did all the platting. And so sometimes we had to make some edits and stuff. So we use those little templates and those markers. So, cool. So what products right now are you currently using at your office? Is it just strictly Civil 3D, or is there other, more products?
Sure. So our hero product is certainly Civil 3D.
Yeah.
We are, a land development and survey firm. We also have a GIS technology group. So we've got a fair number of folks who do all the Esri sort of stuff as well. So
Yeah.
a pretty big pocket there. But from our land development and survey side, Civil 3D is the primary product. And kind of your usual suspects, obviously, in the AEC collection. Sprinkle in a little bit of InfraWorks, a little SSA, and all the various products there. A little bit of Revit, and collaborating with architects and so forth. Landscape architecture group has done some Revit work in that regard too. So it's predominantly the Autodesk products, and I guess you could probably say the usual suspects outside of that as well. We've got a pretty strong transportation group, which is obviously still heavy Bentley across the country, as it is in most of our markets. And Bluebeam and bits like that as well.
Are y'all using kind of, you're speaking of transportation, are you using any kind of like Transoft solutions, third-party applications too, or?
Yeah. So I guess on top of that, obviously the AutoTurn and all the usual suspects that go along with getting the job done.
Yeah. And
of course, don't forget Excel, right?
Yeah. It's a powerful software. I'm telling you, Excel, I use it every day for different things. So especially if you're not using any kind of hydraulic software, I'm doing all my hydraulics in my Excel spreadsheet. So J&J maps, tables and stuff like that. So some people use it for other things, construction cost estimating, spreadsheets and stuff. So.
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't think you could really complete a project these days without a little bit of Excel sprinkled into it.
Yeah. I knew a guy who went in there and actually kind of wrote like a little hydraulic software program in there. I'm like, wow, I was impressed. It had charts and it's automated and stuff. I was like, man, how long did it take you? About a year. I'm like, wow. So, I mean, it just,
I guess technology is like storm and sanitary, and
just off and on throughout the year, just adding on, trying to make it work, automate it, so yeah, it was pretty impressive. So but
I feel like earlier in my career, everyone had that like super Excel spreadsheet for all of their storm stuff, that they had spent hours or years building. And, obviously with, SSA and some of the other tools that have come about, I see that less and less these days, but 10 years ago or so, most engineers I worked with, it seemed, had their favorite Excel spreadsheet for doing all of that.
Yep. Every time I go to a different company, every engineer had their own spreadsheet. Every company, it was totally different. I'm like, oh no, this is my private one. This is the company spreadsheet. This is mine. But they went and tweaked it. So
I think it's kind of like the ode of standards in general, right? Everyone is for standards, but they're kind of like toothbrushes. Everyone has one, but no one wants to use anyone else's.
That's a good point. So if you had some tips you wanted to share, I don't know if you have your computer in front of you, but what would it be, maybe for AutoCAD or Civil 3D or InfraWorks, what tip would you share to the audience of users of these products?
So, I mean, being in a CAD management role, I essentially see the software when it breaks, right?
Yeah.
That's when it kind of comes to my desk. And so, it's probably been repeated over and over again, but, the lesson that I find myself repeating over and over again is just being cognizant of the data footprint of a Civil 3D drawing. And I feel like that's kind of an area that not many people really kind of dive into. They just resign themselves to the notion that Civil 3D is slow and bloated and all these sort of negative things that we see and hear without kind of maybe taking a step back and looking at how they structure their projects. And so I think to me, it's maybe not a good tip to kind of articulate in this forum, but just the basic notion of understanding the differences between XREFs and data shortcuts and how you can kind of strategically leverage both not just to facilitate multiple people working on a project, but to reduce the overall data footprint of any one file in your project.
Yeah.
Thus making it so that, it doesn't take an hour to open up a drawing or plot it.
I've been there. I've gotten into drawings where the record was 50 XREFs in a drawing. And I'm like, wow, no wonder it took 10 minutes to open. I said, there's no way you can cut this down. And they go, no, we have a system, like 50 is pretty excessive. Another one, I get into Civil 3D and there's 10 XREFs, but then there's like 30 data references happening in the drawing. There's just so much syncing going on. I'm like, okay, either you need to cut down on the XREFs or cut down on the data reference. You got both of them coming in, so much coming in.
With all that syncing, I hope the name of the drawing file is titanic.dwg.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was very excessive. I tried.
That's too soon of a dad joke. I'm
how
not
many
sure.
data shortcuts I have, and most times it's just maybe a surface, and that's it. I'm not bringing in corridors and surfaces and pipe networks all in the same drawing. Everything. I'm like, look, if I can label through the XREF, I'm going to label through the XREF. Yeah, I've seen some pretty interesting things. So, or I get in the drawing and everything is in the base drawing. Everything is,
right.
Pipe networks, the corridors and everything. I'm like, whoa. And then they'll data reference things out like, but this drawing's like 40 megs, so it's got everything in it. So, and you're attaching that drawing to a plan sheet. So that's a pretty big file. So,
yeah. So again, I think it's just the overall strategies of using the software. I think that's one of the areas where it's not something that you can learn, especially well in like a training class. It is kind of a, boots on the ground kind of thing that you kind of learn through, frankly, breaking the software and then figuring out how to fix it in a way. Maybe not the best pitch for Civil 3D and whatnot, but yeah, I think that's kind of one of those areas where you can go through any sort of curriculum and certainly learn the basics, learn how the software functions, but in the day-to-day of managing data, I think that's an area that's kind of missing.
Yeah, another tip I always tell guys, like, don't get too crazy with creating styles. I shouldn't go in a style and have 100 styles for a pipe label for just storm. It's like you're trying to think of every scenario for the storm name pipe. Okay, it's class 3, class 4, it's public, it's private, it's this, it's that. And like, okay, if I can just add one word, edit one pipe style and add one word, that should be it. Shouldn't have to scroll to 300 styles to figure out which pipe style label I should use. And I always tell guys, try to condense it down.
Sure. I mean, I know as a CAD manager, that's certainly one of the biggest struggles, right?
Yeah.
Is that your principal focus is to help your team improve productivity and efficiency. That's what I think, in my mind, at least, CAD management ultimately boils down to. But where is that balance point? So, in a past life, I worked with a reseller. So I had the opportunity to see how lots of different firms, I know you have a similar kind of experience in working with lots of different firms and seeing all the different ways that people do things. And, I've seen both extremes, from where, the company pretty much rewrote the ribbon and had a custom button for literally everything.
Yeah.
And then, I've seen larger firms than you would expect still basically starting from the default Civil 3D template.
Oh, wow.
Maybe not that quite extreme, but I mean,
still...
I've seen both ends of the spectrum, and I don't think that there is certainly a one-size-fits-all solution to any of that, but there is a balance point. And, I know, kind of sitting in my role as a CAD manager, that is, I think, one of the biggest challenges, right, is trying to objectively navigate where is that balance point. Again, to your point of, do I create a new style, or do I create a training video that instructs our users how to change class A to class B in the style?
Yeah, exactly.
And sometimes, the answer to that is pretty obvious.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not.
Yeah.
And so I think that's...
I got into somebody's template the other day, and they had a lot of styles, and I just basically told them, look, if I'm confused, the new beginner has to be confused, or a new trainee has to be totally confused of which style to use. I say try to make it as simple as possible, as best as you can. Don't get crazy with even layers. You get in there. The templates I have, like plan sheets, all my plan sheet templates only have 10 layers, but then I go into the base files, it might be 70 layers total. That's it, because I've found ways to condense things down. I don't need a layer for every single item if I don't need to isolate it. So if I can group things together. Yeah, I've gotten to some drawings where it was 1,000, 800 something layers in the drawing. I'm like, whoa, it's a lot. So,
well, I mean, those of us in the civil world, if any drawing file needs anything more, every drawing file can always use another layer.
Another layer.
At least that seems to be the standard operating procedure of civil drawings.
I try to tell people, like, look, if I could, like, a good example is like a profile view. Do I need 10 layers for the profile view? No, if I can control it with one layer and just change the styles and colors, that's why I kind of look at it and say, hey, if I have a layer called profile view, okay, but if I click on it, I can control everything. It's still the same layer, but I can control the colors and line tops all within that one layer because of the style. I'm just controlling about a style. That just cut down a lot of layers for me. That's kind of one example I provide. Something like that is, did I need a layer for the grid, the text on the left, text on the right, the text on the bottom, all these different little things that make up the profile view. If I can control it with one layer, but just change styles, flip it around, just change styles, but still one layer, I'll do it. So if I can.
And I will say on our in my environment, we've opted to do style-based plotting instead of color-based plotting.
Okay.
So we do have more layers because you can't change the style.
That's a good example.
The plot style in the Civil 3D style. I know there's a bit of redundancy there.
Yeah.
So we do have to break things out onto multiple layers. But the reason we did adopt a plot style system versus color-based plotting is to better facilitate that sort of exchange that has to happen between survey and engineering. So most of our survey layers, we follow national CAD standards, like I assume most people do, or tri-services, the USACE tri-services template. And so all of our survey stuff is V layers, V dash layers.
Yeah.
And so we have, most of our survey layers have a V dash prefix in the plot style name. And if you plot the drawing with the survey plot style table, those lines plot out black.
Yeah.
And then when you print it with our engineering plot style table, all of the V dash plot styles plot out screened.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So it just kind of helps make it so that our team can just almost X reference. We have a little routine that will change the line types from continuous in the survey side to a dashed, various dashed interpretations on the engineering side. Yeah. But they're able to run that routine and basically plot their drawings is our strategy.
Yeah. I guess another good example. Now that is a good example. I'm on the color style base, but when I see a drawing that has 3 layers to represent a curb, I'm doing a regular commercial project, and it's a front, top, back of curb, and they're all 3 on individual layers. And you're in a commercial project. The projects I've worked on, I've never isolated one from the other. They're always on, unless I'm doing a very basic dumbed down site plan, which just shows the face of curb or something, the gutter, and that's it, not the back or front. So, so I've seen projects like that, with 3 layers representing the curb. Like, you do realize that if you're not in the 10-20 scale, you can't see all 3 lines. You have, especially in the 40-50 scale, you're not going to be able to see all 3 lines. You're going to have to really, really play hard with those line types, colors and stuff, to make sure they're thin enough you can see all 3 layers at a 40 scale. It's going to be really hard. So, but I'm like,
and, obviously I'm not the first person to say this, but, I think one of the biggest risks to any project is the phrase, "That's the way we've always done it."
Yeah.
And I mean, there is probably some logic around, like, your scenario of, well, why do we put things on a back of curb layer, face of curb, and then the gutter pan or edge of pavement layer? In some scenarios, there's perhaps logic to that. Others, there's not. But if not in that scenario, there's certainly lots of other scenarios where you could certainly apply the phrase of, well, we do it because that's the way we always did it. And there's never that that conversation of, well, why did we do it that way? And, so I know for myself, looking in the world of CAD management, as I look at other CAD managers across the industry, I find the way that people become CAD managers is that they kind of fall in love with the technology. And so that's what they lead with, and that's what they're comfortable with. I'm certainly that guy too. I love the technology. I love every spring when the new releases come out. It's like kind of Christmas in spring. Hey, let's go check out the brand new software and see what's there. It is kind of like Christmas morning for me. But in that same vein, though, that in my mind is only a small fraction of what a CAD manager is really there to do, right? That, CAD management is almost like project management in the sense that, your three constraints are, people, process, and technology or tools. And I find it's easy, the kind of path of least resistance for us is to focus almost exclusively on the technology, because that is our comfort zone. But we have to focus on the people and the process too. So, kind of back to that whole, well, why do we break our layers, our curb layers into three components like that? I think the other kind of responsibility is almost being a change agent within your organization, right? Of, modeling how to change, not necessarily demanding change, but modeling how it can be done.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. That's a good point. That's just from my personal experience. I've never had to isolate one from the other, but I've never worked on every type of project, Right. There's so many different types of projects. I've never worked on an airport project or a big like sewer, project where it's got a sewer plant. There's a lot of projects I've never worked on. So a big highway project. I've done a bunch of road projects, but not like a transportation project.
Right, heavy transportation.
Yeah. So there's quite a few different, like a big oil and gas project. Never worked on a project like that. So there's still some room to grow on those type of projects that, so next question I have is, how have you trained yourself in the product? Did you take classes, or is it self-taught? And how,
So as I mentioned at the kind of the top of the episode here, I guess the closest formal training I had was the drafting classes I took in high school. So really awesome bit about that was my junior and senior year of high school. I was able to basically intern at a local engineering firm. So I kind of got my start there and essentially kind of took on from there. Now, I'll never forget one of my very, very first, I don't know if he was technically my boss or not, but certainly one of my first colleagues. And again, this is in the late 90s, early 2000s. He encouraged me to, have a notebook and print out internet articles or photocopy things out of, Catalyst or Cadence back in the day, the trade magazines that used to come out. And I remember that I always used to, do that. I would take photocopies every month and stuff them away in a binder and whatnot. And that binder at a certain point got to be so unwieldy that it was not usable at all. It was just this, analog gridlock, so to speak. And in many ways, that was what inspired me to create the CAD Geek blog back in 2006, 5, 6, whatever time frame that was when I started that. And initially kind of my mission for my blog was to be a digitized version of that notebook. So I wanted to write down all the stuff that I had forgotten or kind of anticipated that I would forget about the software. I just want to write it down somewhere. I know a lot of people kind of did like the OneNote thing. A lot of people do that kind of.
I've used OneNote all the time.
Method. And I certainly use OneNote a lot as well. But that was kind of the genesis of my blog. And of course, that kind of blew up into a whole nother thing. So I guess it's a really long way of saying that I'm mostly self-taught, but I've always tried to look to others to try to learn from them and kind of write it down and capture it somewhere that I can reference it later.
I've read your blog, throughout the years. I've gone into years. I mean, there was several people even on my blog, I listed like 50 other blogs I went and looked at, and read people's blogs and say, hey, definitely check out, these blogs, for, further advancement in the software, even more detailed and more in depth than mine. So,
Sure.
but yeah, there was a lot of blogs out there that went. I did check out your blog. Adding to what you were saying is in my first job, not just learning the product, but also having to learn engineering. My first boss, who was like a senior engineer, 30 years experience, and he goes, I want you to take a camera with you, the little throwaway cameras. And I didn't have a car at the time, so I rode the bus all the time in San Antonio. So, but
Okay.
the bus system was amazing in San Antonio. You couldn't miss the bus. It came by every 10 minutes.
I've been to San Antonio before, and
I mean, when I was there, it
good
was
public transit.
everywhere.
I recall.
What's that?
I said when I was there, I recall it having really good public transit.
Yeah. And so he goes, everywhere you see like curb ramps, intersections, things that you think don't meet engineering standards, or you think that's, hey, it's very unique, take a photo and we'll talk about it, And I did that. Now, even to this day, I don't take photos. Sometimes I will. It's like, hey, who approved this ADA ramp at this intersection? Even to this day, I still do that. But even when I walk around outside, I look at parking lots, I look at ADA ramps, learning how they did that unique ramp, or learning how they did that unique intersection, that road. I still do that all the time, and I'm trying to learn new things. So today, I'm coming from lunch, I saw an ADA ramp that had to be 2-to-1 slope. I'm like, how in the world did that get approved? That's insane. There's no handrails, nothing at an intersection. Like, okay, I get comments all the time from the city for little petty things, but this thing right here is not even close to being a ramp. I mean, it's like this. It's just going down to the intersection. I'm like, I don't understand. How did that get approved? And it just got resurfaced. So the sidewalk section just got pulled out and put a new one.
Oh, wow.
Put in the exact same slope. I'm like how does that get approved in the city of Dallas? So but yeah, even to this day, I look at stuff driving home. I'm stopping at a stoplight, I'm looking around, looking at the roads, looking at curbs all the time, how the tensions, if I'm driving through a subdivision, if I see a detention pond, I look at the outlet structure, the weirs. So I don't know if you do that, but I do that all the time. I can't even stop myself from doing that. I'm looking around, I'm driving and saying, hey, it's a pretty interesting exit ramp, or it's a pretty interesting ramp there.
It is an industry that makes you kind of acutely aware of things that are invisible to most of the normal world.
Yeah.
I don't know if you run into this as well, that you kind of have a vocabulary that your spouse probably doesn't also have.
Yeah.
And so one that comes to mind recently, or somewhat recently, this was back in kind of the height of COVID, and I had to go to Home Depot to get some stuff. And I came home and my wife asked, was there like a line or anything outside? And I said, well, I mean, it wasn't too bad. I said, they had some stanchions out front, but it wasn't too bad. And my wife goes, what do they have outside? I was like, a stanchion, like the thing that holds the rope. And again, it's just, you kind of get immersed in this world and you start using crazy or what others would perceive as crazy vocabulary.
Yeah. I had fun time, like, when I was dating, my ex-girlfriend, she was like, why is there this giant hole next to this parking lot? And I explained to her how, the rainwater and the tension, and, it was always fun trying to explain to people that never understood some of the engineering things. Like, do you realize it could be an underground detention underneath this pavement? I goes, what? And he goes, yeah, that could be an underground detention, especially like in a Walmart or something. If you don't see a giant hole, most likely there's a giant underground detention.
Right. You're probably standing on top of water.
Huh?
You're probably pulling off like a little Moses without knowing it, that you're walking on water.
So, and they're just kind of blown away by it, like, you're calculating rainfall? Because yes, we're calculating rainfall. And they're like, no way. Yes, we do. There's formulas for that. They're like, no way. They don't believe us when we were calculating rain. So that's always fun trying to explain to people about that. So we calculate the turning radiuses of all kinds of vehicles in a parking lot, especially if our fire truck or dumpster or 18-wheeler coming in for a loading dock. We have to do all those calculations with our software and analyze that kind of stuff horizontally and vertically. I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. That just put the spark installs in a typical little radius and we're good to go. Like, no, it's not that easy. But I look at driveways. That's another thing I look at really, really closely, is just driveways to a commercial or residence. It's like, that's extremely steep. How did that get approved? And then you see a regular sidewalk coming up to it and it's like warped and just like turned that way. I'm like, and just kind of like, how did this get approved? And I can't even get my plans approved for simple
So
stuff.
I've been to Texas, and hearing steep just does not match with my recollection of the landscape down there.
It's pretty flat, but every now and then, I mean, we do have some rolling hills in San Antonio and Austin, but
I know you have hill country.
Dallas is pretty flat. But when you see even a super steep sidewalk around a hospital, I'm like, okay, this doesn't make sense. That's probably the one thing you want to make sure it's ADA accessible, these ramps around a hospital. But you see something that's not even close to being ADA accessible, you're like, okay, really? But yeah, that's something I'm always paying attention to, is how things are being constructed, a road. A brand new apartment complex just got built in front of mine. I'm on the very top 6th floor. So I took a picture every day before I went to work of that apartment. It had an underground parking garage.
Okay.
So it took a little bit over a year. So I have like I don't know how many pictures, because sometimes I took 2. So there are probably 500 photos. I know there's 356 days in here. But I have about 500 photos. I'm about to make a video out of it because I just finished it, a few months ago, and I'm going to create it into a video because I learned some new things while they were building all these piers and stuff. So it was pretty unique, and I did find some mistakes where it rained and it filled up the whole thing into a lake. And they had to pump it out for like 4 days. I'm like, yeah, that was probably a major fine by the city of Dallas coming in and like see a giant lake because they didn't set up nice SWIP plans for this and stormwater protection and stuff. So they're pumping the water from this giant hole because they dug down 20 feet into a 2x2 grade inlet, and they put a erosion control fencing, and it clogged up and it filled up with water and blew up. I'm watching that. I'm like, wow. And it happened twice.
Wow.
So it rained for like 2 days straight and literally filled up the whole foundation.
We had so I live in Richmond, Virginia, and in the early 2000s, there was a tropical storm that came through, Gaston, or I think it was Gaston. Anyway, so in the like 80s and 90s, the James River runs through the city of Richmond, and it seemed like every year downtown Richmond was flooding. So they finally built a flood wall, and they've never actually had to use the flood wall since it's been built. But this tropical storm came in, and basically the storm system in downtown Richmond had not been entirely maintained as it needed to be. And the flood wall kept all the water in the city and it flooded.
Oh, wow. Almost sound like Houston, always flooding.
Right. It's almost like a Houston or a New Orleans or something.
Yeah. Wow. That's I'm sure FEMA was probably suing, going after somebody. Engineers and FEMA.
It was quite the disruptive event back in the day, I remember. But
so let's see. Question: when did you join the AE program? When did you get invited in?
I forget exactly when it was. I feel like it was maybe 2016-ish or so.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't remember. I wasn't one of the inaugural members.
I definitely wasn't either.
But I've been in it for several years now. But yeah, I forget exactly what year it was actually.
2016. I think we may be in the same year. I was either 16 or 17. Yeah.
So that was about where I was 16 or 17. It's been a while now, but it's not been a long time, it feels.
Yeah. So. If you had more free time, what software would you want to learn? There was an extra day in the week, or you had some more time, a whole day to learn something.
So, it's one of these things that, gosh, for probably the last decade or more, I feel like I've been trying to teach myself .NET. And so I would probably say that, really becoming a master of Visual Studio, in kind of the same vein as I've become in the AutoCAD and Civil 3D worlds, would probably be on my list there. And it's always kind of been annoying to me in a personal sense that I know all these really abstract AutoCAD commands and kind of fundamentally kind of typing commands and the way we manipulate the software. The concepts, I feel like, translate quite a bit to programming.
Yeah.
But I've never quite been able to make 1 + 1 = 2 there.
Same. I mean, right now, I'm dabbling with Revit, just kind of playing around a little bit. I'm dabbling with Twin Motions and Lumion, and I took an interest for maybe one weekend for coding. Then I just lost interest. Like I just can't. I don't know why. My brain's like I want to, but my brain's like no.
Yeah,
no. So, but yeah.
So maybe in the next 10 years, I'll get there.
Yeah, I'd love to eventually one day just create my own just one little app, just personal app, and see if I can make it work. So
that does more than Hello World.
Yeah. So what do you think? You think some people are going to, like, the new generation are going to go away, like if they are interested in programming, do you think they're going to shy away from that and go straight into Dynamo and say, look, I'd rather do things in Dynamo than actually try to be in programming, You
so,
think that,
I think
split in the road.
I kind of see, I don't know that Autodesk maybe sees it in the same way, but I kind of see Dynamo, especially now that it's in Civil 3D and it has all the AutoCAD nodes as well inside of there. I kind of see it as sort of the next gen of AutoLisp in a way.
Yeah.
And, with that, because it is visual, I feel like it is going to help sort of democratize that customization.
Yeah.
But, just like not everything could be done in Lisp, you had to go into .NET for some stuff.
Yeah.
I think that sort of proper programming, a proper language, be it VB or C# or whatever your language of choice might be, I still think there's a place for a proper language. But I do feel like programming is becoming a bit more sort of table stakes in a sense of, newer college graduates, as an example. I feel like that's something that's being taught more in that academic setting. And so, I almost expect that, my kids, when they finally graduate high school or graduate college, that, programming is just what you do, that, it's as commonplace as, writing an essay in English class. Is kind of what I expect. I might be wrong with that, but I kind of feel like programming is going to become a more essential skill among the workforce. Versus it's kind of a specialty skill today, and there's obviously a big industry built around that. But I feel like the everyday programming that you and I maybe have been struggling to grasp ourselves is, something that, if not high schoolers, college graduates will probably emerge knowing.
I did ask Autodesk when they were introducing Dynamo, I said, look, is this something that everyone's going to be doing, even from just a regular user, or is this really catered to the CAD managers creating these applications for the end users? And they said it's for everybody. Like, well, I told them I disagree, because I don't see everybody just sitting there trying to create a Dynamo routine in the middle of a project. The project engineer is going to go, no, I need you working on a project. I can't have 4 or 5 of y'all sitting there trying to create some kind of Dynamo or this routine. I need some of y'all still still engineering on the project, because some of those things will take days to write or hours.
Sure.
And I just don't see all these just regular end user designer or EITs sitting there trying to create this stuff. I see the CAD managers doing that, more of the CAD manager or power users doing it. I don't see everyone's just sitting there trying to create Dynamo Lisp routines. So,
well, and I think the way I look at it is this, that I feel like the CAD manager is probably going to be the one that's going to seed it.
Yeah.
Right. But that if I have a Dynamo routine that places light poles along an alignment, and all of a sudden I need to place trash cans along an alignment in a residential context or something, or whatever else. I need to place signage or whatever, whatever that might be, that your every user could take a boilerplate of some sort And I feel like a Dynamo script is a little bit easier to manipulate than maybe a Lisp routine for the sort of every user.
Yeah.
And so, I guess where I kind of see that being is that I feel like 80-90% of what people are going to do in Dynamo is going to be those routines that only take maybe an hour or two to create as a boilerplate and then are easily customized. Every firm, I think, is going to have those routines that you invest a week of time into and pay huge dividends on the back end. But I think where people are going to get the most mileage in Dynamo and Civil 3D as it becomes more mature and more commonplace is going to be those simple little things like, I want to label all of the assemblies in my drawing with what the name of it is underneath of it. Oh, well, let's run a quick, let's throw together a quick Dynamo script and do that. I know that's kind of a commonplace thing I like to do from a drawing maintenance standpoint in my Civil 3D drawings. And it's something that's really easily automated in Dynamo. And so I feel like it's those little tiny things that you can maybe connect a dozen nodes together and do is where I do see the sort of every user leveraging that.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, even if you can break simple templates that people can come in and you're just doing little edits. You've already started something. You can then they can do the simple things, come in and edit something, tweak something, not start from scratch. Possibly.
Or I mean, maybe it is just a quick routine that you can get done in a half dozen nodes. And maybe they do create that from scratch. But
I'm kind of curious. I don't know if it's going to pick up or not. I've had mixed reactions on it. The first time, I'm like, it's going to be difficult to push it out there, especially if PMs are not on board. Like, I don't need guys trying to do programming. Or it could be like, hey, you do see the benefits. Hey, cut down a certain task. A lot of if something if it can take out a couple steps on every single project. Oh yeah, I can see the benefits of it. So, but I've had mixed feelings about the Dynamo. I'm playing with it right now. So I think once I really get a full grasp of it and seeing how much it takes just to make one and make another one and make another one, is it user friendly enough for somebody to come in and do it?
Well, I kind of see it in this way. We were kind of joking about the Excel spreadsheet for storm calcs, right? That that started life as a simple Excel spreadsheet with simple equals formulas inside of it. And then over the years, somebody wrote some VBA inside of it, or it manifested itself over the time. And maybe I'm going to be proven wrong with this, but I feel like it's going to be something similar to that in the life cycle. I know in my past life working with a reseller, seeing Dynamo introduced to the Revit side, it kind of started like that. It was just, let me update all the parameters inside of this Revit model. And I can do it with a click of a button and a few Dynamo nodes and I'm done. And over time, as people got comfortable with that, kind of the simple Excel formula version of Dynamo, they started building upon it. And, just like in Excel, people started putting VBA macros in their Excel spreadsheets. That's where I've seen on the Revit side, a lot of the architects that, 1 or 2, 3, 4 years after, implementing Revit with Dynamo, now they've got these huge graphs that, they've put 40, 60 hours into building, but they also pay dividends on every single project. And so maybe I'm a little bullish there, but that's.
Do you remember the AU design slams for the Revit?
Oh, I do remember.
That was pretty interesting watching because they were doing it with Dynamo and they were just doing all this stuff. I'm like, okay, when are they going to start designing? And they're doing this whole Dynamo. I like an hour later, they push the routine and you see this model go up, I'm like, okay, I see what's happening, but I'm seeing them use the Revit. I'm like, is there anything going to be designed yet? After 30 minutes, you're waiting for something to pop up.
I think that's kind of the perception bit of Dynamo, right? That I know when I first saw it on the Revit side, it was always, all right, I'm going to start snapping together some nodes and I'm going to write some weird formulas that uses some math that I have long since forgotten. And then Alda's going to pop some weird geometric flowy shape, and it's going to have this, intricate trussing system that's going to automatically be modeled in Revit.
Yeah.
And, my first reaction when I saw that was, wow, that is really cool.
Yeah.
But I don't do projects like that.
Yeah.
So, and so I think that's where, as I've seen Dynamo mature more on the Revit side.
Yeah.
Yes, the way it kind of came out was this really flashy, I'm going to press this button and get this, really organic, weird shape looking thing. But when the sort of every user started putting it to work, it was, oh, I need to reconcile my spaces and rooms between the architectural and MEP design of my Revit model. Can I write a Dynamo graph that will do that? Sure. And so it was these sort of more pedestrian things that people started using it for. And I think that's where they found the benefit of it. And so I know that as I began exploring Dynamo with my team on the civil side, those are sort of the opportunities that I'm trying to put my antenna up for.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm hoping to squeeze in some time to learn it more. I spent one weekend just playing with it. I was watching the video and I was trying to recreate it. I'm like, man, okay. Almost got bored halfway through. And then I'm like, okay, because I guess I'm so used to watching something getting built. When you're doing corridors, you're seeing something getting built, but here you're just seeing the kind of the spider web of things going on, and then you don't see nothing until the kind of towards the end.
Until the end, right?
And it's probably like coding for me. Is like you're coding and coding, and you're like, okay, where's the finish line? It's like, but yeah. Are you part of any kind of community organizations or groups you want to share, like that, local in your community or state?
So I would classify myself in a little bit of a transition period in that regard. Yeah. So I am proud to say that I'm an Eagle Scout and Vigil Honor member in the Order of the Arrow. So for many years, I was a bit of a super Boy Scout.
Yeah.
Boy Scouts were kind of a second full-time job for me. And, as I've, started a family and whatnot, I'm kind of passively involved with Boy Scouts, but I am incredibly eager, especially now that my oldest son is about to age into Boy Scouts, to kind of re-engage with Boy Scouts and go through it with that. My son, he'll say that the two things he wants to be when he grows up is a paleontologist, because he loves dinosaurs, and an Eagle Scout. So,
that's good.
I'm eager to help him, at least on the latter piece there.
We have another expert elite member that's highly involved with Boy Scouts. That interview, I can't remember. I think it was Zontod.
I know Brian Hawley is an Eagle Scout as well.
Yeah. Yep. So we have a couple of expert elites that are very involved with Eagle Scouts and Boy Scouts, and so that's cool. That's cool. Let's see. Next question I may have. Where do you think Civil 3D or even InfraWorks is going to be in the next 5-10 years? What's your personal thing? What do you think it's going to be? Not what Autodesk has told you. Where do you think it's going to be?
So, I think one of the areas that, Autodesk kind of promised us maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago, and that I'm starting to finally see dividends on is, at least what I perceive, as a focus on interoperability. That, obviously the foundations of Civil 3D are a result of an acquisition. Revit was an acquisition.
Yep.
And, as a result of that, at least my perception as an Autodesk user has always been that Autodesk has been an exceptional company at acquiring companies, but they all the products, while they flew the same Autodesk flag, they kind of lived in their own little silos.
Yeah.
And I will give credit to Autodesk that I feel like they have really kind of put their money where their mouth is in trying to make the products interoperable with each other. Yeah. I know one of my big frustrations with BIM 360 as an example, when that first came out, was if you're doing this part of BIM 360, it's in this data bank or this file store. And if you're doing the BIM 360 glue, that's in another data bank. And if you're doing this bit of BIM 360, it's in this other data silo. And, seeing them at least centralize that, so you have unified storage across all of the BIM 360 or construction cloud, as they're calling it now. Yeah. And so I will give credit to Autodesk in making their products interoperable with one another. And I will say that kind of seeing that does give me a bit of trust in what I've at least heard more recently, where from a Civil 3D perspective, that their focus has become more on the objects than maybe the software. And I guess to kind of classify that, seeing what they've started doing with Esri and the interoperability there, that, an alignment, well, what is an alignment? Looking at that from an object level so that we can take that from Civil 3D into something like an Esri product, which, I think that's the part that we have to be humble, I think, about in the design world, that we're designing a project for a matter of months, or maybe if it's a big project, a year or two. But hopefully, if we do our job right, what we build is going to be there for 50, 100 years into the future. And so, the lion's share of the life cycle of what we create is operations and maintenance, which if you're in the civil infrastructure world, that is GIS at the end of the day. So, I think this idea that, right now we're kind of looking at it as an alignment, but as you and I both know, an alignment in Civil 3D could very easily be a road. It could be a pipe run. It could be a dam. It could be any number of things. It could be a stream. Any number of things. And so I guess where I kind of hope to see the product go is that there will be additional intelligence behind that, okay, we can look at this alignment as an alignment, but more specifically, I can look at it as a road, or as a pipe run, or as these individual kind of component parts. And I think that will open up some opportunities that no one has really imagined just yet.
That's good. That's a good one. That's good. I've told other guys, I just want one software I can just change workspace, but I know it's different programming, but it'd be just nice. I could just flip the Revit. Okay, I'm going to flip the Revit real quick. You know what? I'm going to bring this point cloud, just flip over the recap real quick and then flip it back.
I will say, like, in the Civil 3D environment itself, one of my long-term kind of wish lists or wish list items has been, I just want the ability to create schedules in a manner that's more similar to Revit. Where I know we have data extraction tables inside of just regular AutoCAD, but as you and I both know, they don't reach too well into the Civil 3D objects, but and we have Civil 3D tables that we can create, but they don't interact so well with the AutoCAD stuff that sometimes or frankly always coexists. And so kind of a unified scheduling piece inside of Civil 3D has been kind of a wish list of mine for some time, that I just want to be able to create a schedule and merge AutoCAD and Civil 3D data. And, just like you can merge data from several different sources inside of Revit, something similar to that in the civil environment. That's kind of my more nearish term, I guess, wish.
Do you play with property sets in Civil 3D?
We've done some property sets. Certainly probably not leveraging them as best we can. So I know that part of the answer there is, property sets, and frankly, back to Dynamo, right? Where we can start setting property sets through Dynamo.
I was just thinking about that. So, but I've played with the property sets a little bit. Sometimes I forget about to use it. I was like, man, I should have used at the end of the project. I should have used property sets. But
same thing with expressions for styles. I feel like that's another one that
expressions
is super
parcels,
super powerful. But I'm certainly guilty of, in hindsight, saying, you know what, I could have done an expression. And things would have been a lot easier.
I use expressions on my own storm pipes. So
okay.
I got quite a few expressions I use for storm pipes. I've seen people use it for their parcels on drainage area maps and stuff like that. So
Well, and I've also used expressions for, like, in parcels with the styles. in a residential neighborhood.
Yeah.
When you're looking at it at your 30, 40, 50 scale, whatever you're doing your plan sheets at,
Yeah.
you want your lot numbers to be really big and you need the area underneath of that. But if you just want to X reference that into another drawing at a 100 scale or 200 scale,
yeah,
writing an expression that dynamically sets the height of the text based on the scale of the viewport. So that's one of the little hacks that I've done for expressions sometimes is basically use one style, but for the area information, you know, how many acres or square feet the parcel is, basically if it's over 100 scale, set that text height to like 0.1, 0.001 or 0. So it basically disappears, and then also manage the lot number.
Yeah. There's a lot of little hidden gems that people have forgotten that are in the product, you know, that they pushed it when they first released it, and it's been so long that no one talks about it no more. So you know, people have forgotten, and all the new generation doesn't know it's there. A good example is somebody didn't have vehicle tracking, and they're like, hey, I want to do a parking lot layout, and they're doing all the offset for the parking stalls. Like, oh, you do realize there's a parking tool pallets, you know, for all your parkings and stuff like that. They go, what? Because yeah, if you don't have any of that kind of stuff, there's a parking tool outs, you know, from Imperial, all the different angle parkings and sizes. And they go, what? And they were kind of blown away. They're like, yeah, there's a bunch of hidden gems in there for landscaping stuff and signage. And I'm like, oh my.
Or even just using vehicle tracking to lay out your parking lot.
Yeah, yeah, but I was just saying they didn't have it, you know, like, oh yeah, but you could use vehicle tracking and purchase it, you know. So, but no, it was interesting. There's a lot of cool little gems that people don't realize it's there. You know, no one talks about it because of, you know, they talked about it 10 years ago. So
to me, I think one of the big ones for me in that regard, especially in civil drawings, where we so often have objects stacked on top of other objects. So, you know, a corridor is a perfect example. You've got the alignment, you've got the corridor, and you've got the surface all just, even in a super clean drawing, all stacked on top of each other. And sometimes you need to select one or the other. And I remember, I forgot when it came out, but 2010, 11, 12 is when selection cycling was added to AutoCAD. And it was the big new feature. And now it's no longer in the default status bar.
Yeah.
You have to add it. And at least in civil drawings, I personally find selection cycling incredibly invaluable in, you know, selecting things in that scenario.
You know, one of the tips I try to share people is taking advantage of quick properties. I'm a big advocate of the quick properties. I've customized my quick properties to show what only the items I want to sell. Very rarely do I ever have the properties dialog box open. If I have to, I'll use it. You know, the quick property doesn't work for everything. But I don't really have that dialog box open ever. I use quick properties. I customize all my tools and set it up. So, and I'll tell people like, hey, here's another option. If you don't like the properties dialog box, you want this one, it's dynamic, it disappears when you're done. Try the quick properties. I love it. You know, so,
and I like quick properties as well, but to your point, it is one of those things that out of the box, it leaves a lot to be desired.
Yeah.
And you do have to customize it to show the properties that matter to you.
Exactly. But let's see here. I guess my last question is, do you have any social media platforms you want to kind of share to the followers here? You know, if they want to follow you on LinkedIn or some social media, where would they come to follow you?
Sure. So you can pretty much find me on any social media platform as the CAD Geek. So I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, I'm on YouTube and Instagram, all as the CAD Geek on there. And then likewise, just as myself on LinkedIn as Donnie Gladfelter. And then finally, my blog is thecadgeek.com.
Well, cool. I'll be sure to post it here on this video so everybody can see it and maybe they'll follow you. So, well, that's all the questions I had. Hopefully everybody enjoyed the video. And Donnie, I'm definitely glad that you came and wanted to do this short little video with us.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me, Tony.
Yeah. And we'll see you in a couple of months. We're going to come back and do another section with more in-depth topics. So, all right. Well, have a good weekend.
Awesome.